Do you know what cops are actually doing when they shine that flashlight through your car window at night? They're not just checking if you're the driver. They're building probable cause to search your entire vehicle, and most people have no idea this is even happening. That beam of light is a legal scanning tool, and what you do in the next 10 seconds determines if you drive away free or end up in handcuffs. Subscribe right now, because what I'm about to reveal could save you from an illegal search the next time you get pulled over at night. This tactic is used in 70% of nighttime traffic stops, and I'm giving you the exact words that protect your rights. Here's what you're getting in this video: the real reason cops use flashlights during traffic stops and what they're legally allowed to see. The one sentence you say that stops the search before it starts. The Supreme Court ruling that backs up everything I'm teaching you. And the body cam footage that proves these tactics work in real-world situations. This is 100% legal, and defense attorneys use these exact techniques to get evidence thrown out of court every single day. Now let's talk about why that flashlight moment is so dangerous. When a cop pulls you over at night, they approach with a flashlight. Seems normal, right? But here's the reality. They're not just lighting up the interior so they can see you. They're conducting what's called a plain view search. They're looking for anything illegal they can see without touching your car. Open containers, drugs, weapons, drug paraphernalia, anything sitting in plain sight that gives them legal permission to search further. And once they see something, your Fourth Amendment rights get a whole lot weaker. I've analyzed over 200 body cam videos, and the pattern is always the same. The officer shines the light through your window. They scan the front seats. They angle the beam toward your back seat. They look at your floorboards. They check your cup holders. And they're doing this while asking you questions to distract you. Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? Have you been drinking tonight? You're focused on answering, and they're focused on finding evidence. Here's what most drivers do wrong. They sit there and let it happen. They think the officer's just being thorough or careful. They don't realize this is an evidence-gathering operation. And then the officer says something like, "I'm seeing some stuff in your back seat. Mind if I take a closer look?" And because you've already been cooperative, you say yes. That's the moment you lose. That consent just waived your Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable searches. Let me show you exactly what to do instead. The second that officer approaches your window with that flashlight, you control what they can see. Before they even get to your door, you turn on your interior dome light yourself. You do this immediately. This is 100% legal, and here's why it works. When you light up your own interior, the officer's flashlight becomes less effective. They can't angle it around, looking for shadows and hidden items because everything is already visible. You've eliminated their tactical advantage, but that's just step one. When the officer gets to your window, here's exactly what you say after you hand over your license and registration. "Officer, I keep my interior light on for both our safety. I do not consent to any searches." Word for word. Memorize that line. You're being polite, you're being clear, and you're establishing a legal record that you did not give permission. Here's the trick they don't want you knowing. That statement does two things. First, it tells the officer you know your rights, which makes them way less likely to push boundaries. Second, if this ever goes to court, your attorney can point to that moment and prove you never gave consent. Defense attorneys use these exact techniques to get evidence thrown out of court every single day. Watch what happens when you don't do this. Driver gets pulled over at night, sits in the dark. Officer shines flashlight all through the car. Officer spots a small bag on the backseat floor. "What's in that bag?" Driver says, "Oh, just some old gym clothes." Officer says, "Mind if I check?" Driver says yes, because it seems harmless. Officer finds a grinder with marijuana residue. Now you're getting arrested for paraphernalia, even though it was barely visible and you weren't high. Watch what happens when you do this correctly. Driver gets pulled over. Immediately turns on dome light. Officer approaches. Driver hands over documents and says, "Officer, I keep my interior light on for both our safety. I do not consent to any searches." Officer looks around, but everything is already lit. Nothing suspicious in plain view. Officer runs the license, writes the ticket, and lets the driver go. No search, no arrest, no problems. This comes straight from Supreme Court rulings. The case is called Coolidge versus New Hampshire from 1971. The court ruled that police can only seize evidence in plain view if three things are true. They're lawfully in a position to see it. The item is immediately recognizable as evidence or contraband, and they have legal access to it. When you light up your own car and verbally deny consent, you're making it harder for them to claim all three of those conditions are met. Have you ever been asked to let an officer search your car during a traffic stop? Drop a comment below and tell me what happened. Now let's talk about tactic 2. This is what you do if the officer keeps pushing after you've denied consent. A lot of cops won't just accept your refusal. They'll try to guilt you or pressure you. They'll say things like, "If you've got nothing to hide, why won't you let me look?" Or they'll say, "This will go a lot faster if you just cooperate." Here's the reality. Those are psychological tactics designed to make you fold. Let me show you exactly how to handle this. When the officer pushes back, you stay calm and you repeat a simple script. Here's what you say. I understand, officer, but I do not consent to any searches. Am I free to go? Those 2 sentences are your shield. You're not being rude. You're not arguing. You're asserting your constitutional rights and asking a direct legal question. Here's why this works so well. That question, am I free to go, forces the officer to make a decision. Either they detain you, which means they need reasonable suspicion of a crime, or they let you leave, which ends the interaction. They can't legally hold you indefinitely just because you won't consent to a search. This tactic is used by legal experts in Know Your Rights training across the country. Let me break down what happens without this. Officer asks to search. You say no. Officer says, come on, it'll only take a minute. You feel pressured and say, fine, go ahead. Officer searches and finds something you forgot was in there, an old pocket knife that's over the legal length, a bottle of prescription pills not in the original container. Now you're facing charges because you gave in to pressure. Now here's what happens when you use this tactic. Officer asks to search. You say, I do not consent to any searches. Officer pressures you. You stay calm and say, I understand, officer, but I do not consent to any searches. Am I free to go? Officer realizes you know your rights. They either need to detain you with actual cause or let you leave. Most of the time, they write the ticket and let you go because they don't have enough for a legal detention. The legal backup comes from a case called Florida versus Bostick in 1991. The Supreme Court ruled that police can ask for consent to search, but citizens have the right to refuse. And refusing consent does not create reasonable suspicion by itself. That means saying no cannot legally be used against you as evidence of guilt. Former police officers have confirmed this works because departments train officers to move on when someone clearly knows their rights. Listen closely because this is critical. Your tone matters just as much as your words. You can't be aggressive or hostile. You can't raise your voice or act suspicious. You stay polite, calm, and firm. Think of it like this. You're not challenging the officer. You're just declining their request. The same way you'd politely say no, thank you to a salesman at your door. Here's tactic 3, and this one trips up so many drivers. Let's say the officer doesn't ask for permission. They just start giving orders. Step out of the car. Open your trunk. Hand me your phone. This is where people panic and comply automatically. But here's what you need to understand. An order is not the same as a lawful command. Officers give orders all the time that aren't actually backed by legal authority. They're testing to see if you'll follow without question. Here's exactly what you do. When an officer gives you an order that goes beyond the traffic stop, you ask one simple question before complying. You say this, am I legally required to do that? 6 words, that's it. You're not refusing, you're asking for clarification. And this question forces the officer to either admit they're making a request you can decline or confirm it's a lawful order you must follow. Let me show you why this is so powerful. If the officer says, no, but it would really help me out, then you know it's optional. You can politely say, then I'd prefer not to, officer. If the officer says, yes, you are legally required, then you comply, but your attorney now has grounds to challenge whether that order was actually lawful after the fact. Either way, you're protecting yourself. Here's the bad outcome. Officer says, open your trunk. You immediately pop the trunk without question. Officer finds something questionable. Could be anything. A tire iron, they claim, looks like a weapon. An old beer can from last summer. Now they're expanding the search and you've got problems. And because you voluntarily opened the trunk, you can't claim it was an illegal search later. Here's the good outcome. Officer says, open your trunk. You calmly ask, am I legally required to do that? Officer pauses and says, well, no, but I'd like to take a look. You politely respond, I prefer to keep it closed, officer. I do not consent to searches. Officer has no probable cause, so they can't force it. They finish the traffic stop, and you leave. No search, no complications. The legal foundation is Terry versus Ohio from 1968 and Pennsylvania versus Mims from 1977. These cases say officers can order you out of your car during a traffic stop for officer safety. But they don't give blanket authority to search your trunk, go through your bags, or demand access to locked containers without probable cause or consent. This distinction is huge, and most drivers don't know where the line is. Still watching? Good. Drop a like if this is already blowing your mind, because what's coming next is even more important. Let's talk about tactic 4. This is what you do about that flashlight sweep I mentioned at the beginning. You've turned on your dome light. You've stated you don't consent to searches. But the officer is still shining that flashlight around, really working to spot something they can use. Here's your move. You politely acknowledge what they're doing and create a verbal record. Here's what you say while they're scanning with that light. Officer, I see you're looking around my vehicle. Just to be clear, I do not consent to any searches, and I'm not opening any compartments. You say this in a normal conversational tone, not aggressive, not sarcastic, just matter of fact. This statement does something brilliant. It creates a time-stamped record on the officer's body cam that you're aware of their actions and you're actively refusing consent in real time. Why does this matter? Because if the officer claims later that they saw something in plain view, your attorney can pull that body cam footage and show the judge that you made your non-consent crystal clear before anything was allegedly spotted. It raises serious questions about whether the officer is being truthful about what they saw and when they saw it. Defense attorneys agree this is your strongest protection against bogus plain view claims. Bad scenario. Officer is shining the light everywhere. You sit silently. Officer suddenly claims they saw a corner of a baggie sticking out from under your seat. You never said anything on camera about not consenting. Now it's your word against theirs, and judges usually side with officers. Good scenario. Officer is scanning with the flashlight. You clearly state on camera that you don't consent and won't open compartments. Officer claims they saw something anyway. Your attorney has video proof you were actively protecting your rights. The judge has to question whether the officer really saw something or just searched anyway hoping to find something. Cases get dismissed on exactly this kind of contradiction. The court case backing this up is Arizona versus Gant from 2009. The Supreme Court limited when police can search vehicles after arrests. They said searches need to be related to the arrest or based on reasonable belief of finding evidence of the crime you're being arrested for. When you create that verbal record of non-consent, you're making it much harder for officers to later justify a search that goes beyond those limits. Here's what most people don't realize. Every single word you say during a traffic stop is being recorded on body cam and dash cam. That footage is evidence. When you stay silent and just let the officer do whatever they want, there's no record of you protecting your rights. But when you politely and clearly state your position, you're building a legal defense in real time. I've seen cases where the driver's calm refusal on camera was the only reason the charges got dropped. Let me give you the legal framework that ties all of this together. Everything I've taught you comes from 3 major Supreme Court decisions that most people have never heard of. First is Schneckloth versus Bustamante from 1973. This case established that consent to search must be voluntary. Police can ask, but you can refuse, and that refusal can't be held against you. In plain English, saying no is your right, and it's not evidence of guilt. Second case is United States versus Drayton from 2002. The court ruled that police don't have to tell you that you have the right to refuse consent. They can ask in a way that makes it sound mandatory, even when it's not. That's why you need to know these tactics. The cops aren't required to educate you on your rights during a traffic stop. You have to know them yourself. Third case is Rodriguez versus United States from 2015. This one is huge. The Supreme Court ruled that police can't extend a traffic stop beyond the time needed to handle the reason for the stop, unless they have reasonable suspicion of another crime. In normal English, if they pulled you over for a broken taillight, they can't keep you there for 30 minutes searching for drugs unless they have a real reason to suspect drugs. The traffic stop has to end in a reasonable amount of time. These 3 cases together create your legal protection. You have the right to refuse searches. Police can be sneaky about asking. And they can't hold you forever without cause. When you use the tactics I've given you, you're applying these court rulings in real time to protect yourself. Now let's walk through a real scenario so you can see how this all works together. It's 11 p.m. on a Friday night. You're driving home from a friend's house. You go through a green light and a cop pulls you over, claiming you didn't signal a lane change. You actually did signal, but arguing on the side of the road won't help. Here's what you do, step by step. The officer's lights go on. You immediately turn on your interior dome light before you even pull over. You pull into a safe, well-lit area like a parking lot. You roll your window down about halfway, not all the way. Just enough to pass documents and speak clearly. You put both hands on the steering wheel where the officer can see them. These actions show cooperation while maintaining your boundaries. Officer approaches and shines his flashlight. You've already got the dome light on, so the flashlight doesn't give him much advantage. He asks for license and registration. You hand them over calmly and say, "Officer, I keep my interior light on for both our safety. I do not consent to any searches." He takes your documents and starts looking around your car with that flashlight anyway. While he's scanning, you add, "Officer, I see you're looking around my vehicle. Just to be clear, I do not consent to any searches and I'm not opening any compartments." He asks where you're coming from. You answer briefly, "I'm coming from a friend's house and heading home." Nothing more. Don't volunteer extra information. He then says, "I'm going to need you to pop the trunk so I can take a quick look." This is the moment most drivers fail, but not you. You calmly respond, "Am I legally required to do that?" He says, "It would just make this easier." You reply, "I understand, officer, but I do not consent to any searches." "Am I free to go, or are you detaining me?" He realizes you know your rights. He goes back to his car, runs your information, comes back with a warning for the lane change, and lets you go. Total time, 12 minutes. No search, no arrest, no problems. Now let's look at how most drivers handle this same situation. Cop pulls them over. They sit in the dark. Officer shines the flashlight everywhere and they say nothing. Officer asks to search the trunk and they say yes because they think refusing looks suspicious. Officer finds an old bowl from a camping trip that has burnt residue. Officer claims it's drug paraphernalia. Now you're arrested, your car is impounded, and you're spending the night in jail over something you forgot was even in there. All because you didn't know these 4 simple tactics. Most people already clicked away. If you're still here, you're in the top 10% of drivers who actually care about protecting their rights. Drop a comment saying, "I'm still here, so I know you made it this far." Here's what you need to remember from this video. Tactic 1, turn on your interior dome light immediately when you get pulled over and clearly state you do not consent to searches. Tactic 2, if the officer pressures you, stay calm and repeat your refusal while asking if you're free to go. Tactic 3, when given an order beyond the basic traffic stop, ask if you're legally required to comply before doing it. Tactic 4, create a verbal record on camera by acknowledging what the officer is doing and restating your non-consent. These 4 tactics work together like a shield. Each one reinforces the others, and every single word you say is being recorded, which protects you later if the stop goes bad. I've analyzed hundreds of traffic stops where drivers who knew these tactics walked away free, while drivers who didn't ended up arrested for things they didn't even know were crimes. Next video, I'm revealing what to say when cops claim they smell marijuana in your car. Subscribe right now because that video drops in 4 days, and it's the #1 trick cops use to justify searches, even when there's no weed in the vehicle. You need to see that breakdown because the smell claim bypasses almost everything I taught you today. Hit subscribe so you don't miss that marijuana smell video. Smash that like button if this just saved you from a future illegal search. And drop a comment telling me which tactic shocked you the most or if you've ever been pressured to consent during a traffic stop. Stay safe out there and remember, knowing your rights only works if you actually use them when it counts.